Do you have any idea of the historic time that you're living in now? In the fractionated political sphere and a deteriorating global peace, you're a locus with much more power than you think. That's the scary realization that Tucker Carlson just had in his conversation with Jordan Peterson, and it's time that you heed this message before it's too late. Here's Tucker presenting what I believe is the most accurate synopsis of our political era in the leading up to the divisive 2024 election.
You know that there is a collision coming between titanic forces, the population of America versus its leaders. And it's coming to a head because of the structure of this election. And so you have the Republican candidate, and he is going to be the candidate, whose election is the one thing they won't tolerate is the orange man in power. And you sort of, and that, like, you wonder, well, why? Because Trump is not a radical at all. And Trump's vision for America, this is an informed assessment of Trump, Trump's vision for America is like Studio 54 in 1978.
You know why that rings so true? Trump for long has been described as a populist, but that perhaps misses the deeper point. Whether you agree with him or not, the enigma of Donald Trump is a bottom-up amalgam of resentment regarding where the country was going in recent decades. It was a disillusionment paired with a degree of nostalgia for an older time, and that's why the "again" in his "Make America Great Again" slogan caught on so well. It's compounded by the fact that most Americans now believe that something like a deep state does exist, with polls showing that over 64% of citizens think it does, and 80% agreeing that it is spying on them. But of course, time moves on one direction, and so does history. This next election is the one collision point that revivalist and populist political wing versus an entrenched status quo that just won't let go. It's an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object, and the consequences of that will be a lot of heat and friction. There's hardly anyone in the Republican Party before Trump that has so clearly embraced the anti-establishmentarianism image that he has, even though he occasionally veers off into conspiracy theory fringe. However, I can certainly think of people after him with names like Vivek Ramaswamy, maybe even RFK Jr., who have seen the success of that formula and tried to replicate it, but definitely not at his same level.
In the end, the will of the people matters. The conclusion that I've come to is that it matters less than it should, and that the people in power really do make the bulk of the decisions. And I say that after spending 35 years in Washington and watching the agenda of both parties and comparing that agenda to the public opinion polling of what people actually want and finding no union set. No union set. Like, there's not the same agendas. So what you have now is a legit mass movement on behalf of Donald Trump that's 100% real, and you have absolute ironclad resistance to the democratic process working its way to a legitimate conclusion by the people who have all the power. What happens next? I don't even know.
I don't know either, but I think we can take a crack at what it might be. In fact, we may have already seen it. The consequence of that is lost trust in the system at large, culminating catastrophically in events like January 6th and directly calling into question elections and the democratic process. You may lean to whichever side you want, but it is impossible to deny that it's the result of an increasingly united populace against their conception of a deep state or the permanent Washington. Is it possible that we'll see a continuation of that this year? Well, I certainly hope not. Every new election is a chance at a reset, and America right now desperately needs that fresh start in its socially fractured and financially depleted state. But as it stands now, there is a large part of the political spectrum united behind Trump that may not be willing to relent that easily, and judging from this next clip, we may be set to witness a repeat of 2020 in case the election results come as a surprise to him.
Will you commit tonight to accepting the results of the 2024 election?
Yeah, if I think it's an honest election, absolutely I would.
Will you commit to accepting the results of the election regardless of the outcome?
You want me to answer it again? If I think it's an honest election, I would be honored to.
Think of that what you will, because I don't think you need to be on either side to understand how dangerous of a precedent it is. Donald Trump is like a whirlpool spinning the entire political machine around him, and it's that power in recent times that has become even more concentrated and dangerous for his detractors. But taking a step back and looking at the big picture, there's something that Jordan Peterson believes that in my life has been liberating yet empowering. It's the idea that the first proximal path to making the world better is always in your grasp, And it's that message that Jordan believes is the antidote to any pessimism coming from the current political arena.
I don't think that power is where people think it is. I don't think that power is in the hands of the elite. The ability to manipulate, misuse power might be in the hands of the elite, but the power that we need to set the world straight is actually at your fingertips. And this is actually a rather terrifying realization, because there's some relief in thinking that the elites can do whatever they want and there's nothing that someone as small as you could possibly do about it. And that's wrong because you're not small. And it's wrong because it's irresponsible to presume that.
You know the one quote that encapsulates this idea perfectly? Philosopher Immanuel Kant laid out what's called the categorical imperative that says, quote, "Act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time. Will that it should become a universal law." Simply put, always ask yourself, would the world be a better or worse place if everyone did the same as you? I know it's easy to become so lost and hypnotized in a never-ending political game that you lose track of things in your own power that can make the world just a tiny bit better. Change starts from inside and then spreads out into your family, community, and the world. It doesn't start from a man in political office hundreds of layers removed from your life. I think that's also why one of the most vital maxims in Jordan's book, 12 Rules for Life, is to, quote, tell the truth or at least don't lie. There's a core of a cynicism where regarding the wider politics and socialized issues of the day with a realization that they don't impact your life in the way that every single deed and utterance do in your own life.
Everyone has a sense of that now, that it's something is moving that's deeper than the mere political. The tectonic plates themselves are shifting, and you're all going to play a role in that, and the role you'll play is going to be determined by what you determine to ally your speech with, for example, your decision about whether or not you're going to tell the truth in the confines of your own life. And if enough people, all of you, if enough of you decide in the local circumstances of your own life to dare to say what you believe to be true, then the tyrants will have no purchase on you and you won't be slaves.
I don't think anyone has helped me understand that truly more in my life than Alexander Solzhenitsyn, introduced to me by Jordan Peterson himself. Anyone that understands the power of truthful speech in his book, The Gulag Archipelago, understands how words can eventually bring down entire empires as it did with the Soviet Union. Look at any tyrannical system throughout history and you see that it would only have taken around 20 rightly placed people to cooperate and bring down a tyrant. But what happens is that you have the first mover problem. No one wants to stand out and no one wants to stand in front of power and speak the truth. After all, it's easier to just relegate that responsibility to someone else or just sulk in your own victimhood, culminating in tyrannical empires continuing for centuries. For Tucker Carlson and Jordan Peterson, it's clear that a population that can speak forth the truth is the greatest bulwark against authoritarianism, whether it comes from a dictatorial government, a censorious corporation, or a shadowy deep state.